Hello and welcome to Florida Gators Live, episode 68, presented by FanDuel. A lot to get into this week. First of all, Florida basketball win we just watched go on the road and beat Texas. Florida's winning streak now at 8 in a row, and they're closing in on potentially their first SEC regular season title since 2014. So we'll certainly get into that. We'll get into some recruiting updates here tonight, both on a second commit in the class, which just happened today, and we'll get into some quarterback recruiting news. And also, we'll continue our positional previews with the wide receiver room, which I'm really excited to talk about because I think it's going to be a really good room this year. But before we get into all that, Max, how are you doing? How's your week been?
It's been good. Again, quiet right now on the football front. No media availability this week as we've run through the coaches. But I guess outside the recruiting, the biggest news today is Florida completed Rusty Witt's gauntlet, which means spring ball could start and they could wear the Gator logo. So a little small incentive that had to happen sometime this month, but yeah, it's been a good week. Happy to be back. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and yeah, well, let's get right into it.
Yeah, we'll talk some basketball because Florida just went on the road, beat Texas 84-71, covered as a 7.5-point favorite, according to FanDuel. Kind of a surprising cover. Didn't necessarily feel like that would happen because this game was pretty tight throughout. Gators trailed by 3 at halftime, but really impressive performance in the second half, particularly on the defensive end. Alex Condon finishes your leading scorer with 23 points. He was 10 of 12. He's playing out of his mind right now. I think, in my opinion, the best basketball of his entire career so far. Great game from Boogie Flan, too. Hit a couple threes, was 7 of 10 from the field, dropped 22 points. Florida shot 59% from the field in this game, 8 of 18, so 44% from three. Really impressive. I mean, in spite of this game being tight, I thought Florida played really well tonight. I think this was one of their more impressive games of the season. Defensively, like Texas, they did a good job. Texas was just making tough shots, especially in the first half to stay in this game. I mean, they have a really good backcourt, and those guys had good games. Swain had 21 leading the team. Pope had 14. Tremont Mark had 15. So those guys played really well tonight and kind of kept it close. But I thought this was one of the more impressive games Florida's played this year, especially considering, the adversity they were facing trailing at half on the road. I thought a really impressive job to close this out and win by double digits.
Absolutely. I mean, they limited Texas to 22 second half points, I believe, or it might have been a little more. Was it 39?
32. It was 48-32.
I forgot if it was 39 or 49 they had at the half. But
yeah.
And this game was tied at 64 with just about 7 minutes left. And then from there, obviously you look at the final score, the Gators outscored Texas 20-7 in those 7 minutes. Some really great defensive plays, a couple steals from Boogie Fland, a nice block by Micah Handlocked in a game where otherwise I thought he was probably the worst player on the field for Florida. It seemed to get, the foul trouble in the front court tonight was really the only downside. And that kind of bit Thomas Houck and Ruben Chinua, who both finished with 5 points. It's kind of weird when you look and Ruben Chinua finishes a game with 4 rebounds. I'm sure that's his lowest in I don't even know how long. So, but despite that, the Gators get a double-digit win in a game where they shoot 8 for 18 from 3, like you said. Alex Condon makes a 3 for the third straight game now. And he's been lights out, 3 straight games with 20-plus points. He's just been so impressive. He did a good job tonight. He had 0 turnovers tonight. That's something we've talked about on both of our shows, is the turnovers with Alex Condon, and something that has been a problem. When he limits those, he's a really effective player to go along with his defense, and he only had 2 fouls, so he did a nice job, maintaining his spot on the court. And like you said, just overall as a team, I thought this was one of Boogie Fland's better games this season, just all around. He's a great defender. He's really emerged as one of the better defensive guards. And this is the type of game that is going to look really good because I think Texas deserves to be a tournament team. I know I think a win today would have done a lot for them in terms of establishing them fully in the field. But I think they've done enough. 17 wins in the SEC this year. I think they'll probably grab a couple more. They're a team that could definitely upset a team in the SEC tournament as well. But the win tonight by Florida, they're still number 5 in Ken Palm. They're right behind Illinois, but the gap between 5 and 6 is 2 full points in net rating. So Florida pretty firmly a top 5 analytical team, according to Ken Palm, and pretty firmly at least for everyone except Joe Lenardi, it seems, at that 2 seed.
Yeah.
And I expect them to stay around there. I mean, we've talked about that multiple times, but that just feels like the spot right now. I think the 1 seeds, UConn looked amazing tonight. They were kind of the team that was like on the brink, but tonight proved a lot for them, and I think is a huge resume booster with that massive win over St. John's. But I don't really know if there's an avenue to Florida getting a 1 seed. I think it's possible. It's just, will the pieces fall into place for that to happen? Because you would think if an Iowa State won the Big 12, they would get that spot over Florida, even if Florida wins out. So a really good performance. I looked it up. Chinua's matched his lowest with 4 from the Georgia game on the 6th of January. And then he had only 1 in the opener against Arizona, where he only played 17 minutes. But those are his only games under 6 rebounds on the season. So even in an uncharacteristic game for Florida's 2 best players this season, everybody else steps up, and a big win for the Gators.
Yeah, 100%. On the seeding thing, yeah, I mean, I think a path to a 1 just probably isn't going to happen. Like, I don't think you're going to jump that entire two seed line to get there. I think if Florida wins these last 3 regular season games, I think they almost certainly will be a 2, even though Lunardi doesn't have it right now. And even if you take Lunardi as gospel, which you shouldn't. But even if you do, like, those Big 10 teams are going to beat each other up. Those Big 12 teams are going to beat each other up. Like, there will be enough that happens that if Florida wins out, I'm pretty confident they'll be a 2. Maybe we'll see what happens in the tournament. I'm kind of inclined to believe that conference tournaments don't matter for seeding purposes. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, I think, a couple things from the game itself that were really interesting to me. Like, you were talking about Condon, no turnovers. Not a lot of that offensive sloppiness we've seen in general in recent games. Only 9 turnovers as a team. Boogie only had 1. Lee had 3. A couple not great ones, but still just not a major issue in this game. As you mentioned, down games for Hauk and Chinyulu. I mean, they both were in foul trouble for a lot of this game. Hauk fouled out. Chinyulu had 4, and they both got to 4 pretty early. So they were sitting on the bench for considerable stretches there in the second half, which to me, like, that is maybe the most impressive thing to me about this game is Florida hasn't been in that situation much this year where they can't have either of those guys on the floor. It kind of put him in an uncomfortable spot. And, like, frankly, I would have thought maybe that Florida wouldn't have answers in that situation. But those, the guys who came in played really well in that stretch. So really impressive to kind of overcome that adversity in this game. And yeah, I mean, I think this team is trending in a great direction. Obviously, Saturday's game against Arkansas is going to be key. Arkansas right now is playing Texas A&M. They were losing when last I saw, but that was before we went live. So I'm not sure are they still losing or
let's take a quick look. They're up 4 right now.
Okay. Because if Arkansas loses this game tonight, I mean, Florida, not officially, but like for all intents and purposes, would clinch a share of the SEC regular season. Like, Bama's still at 4 losses. Tennessee lost last night. That was helpful for the cause. But I mean, if Florida were to lose these last 3 games to 2 teams that I think are good, but they're better than, and a Mississippi State team that's really bad, then yeah, obviously they wouldn't in that scenario. But I think that's really unlikely to happen. I think it's likelier that Bama loses another game than Florida loses all 3 of those games. So, I think if Arkansas were to drop this game, you can pretty much lock up SEC, at least again, at least co-champions. But again, Florida hoping for more than that. But man, this team's really coming on at the right time. And the more I watch this team play, you know, when I watch Condon playing at the level he's playing at, which, like I said earlier, I think the best, in my opinion, of his entire career, you know, if you get that in the tournament and you get this pretty, you know, at least semi-competent 3-point shooting offense from the guards, I mean, this team is going to make a deep run if that's what you're getting. And I think they have a very good chance to repeat, although, you know, it's a tournament and anything can happen. But, you know, this team's coming on at the right time. I think that's a credit to Todd Golden and his staff and the way they've, you know, just gotten this thing kind of back on track after a rough start. This is clearly one of the best teams in the country right now.
Absolutely. I think they're playing, you know, like at minimum a top 5 team in the country right now. Obviously they're up to number 7 in the AP poll, but the first point I want to make is that Florida has 6 losses. I think all 6 of those teams right now, if the bracket came out tomorrow, would be in the field. Every and 3 would be 1 seeds. So, and they played all those 1 seeds close. Arizona in the first game of the year, they could have beat, they honestly should have beat Duke in camera, and that would have been a crazy win because Duke is pretty. I mean, unless Duke messes up, they're going to be the number 1 overall seed, and Florida almost beat them at home, and UConn obviously, but Missouri with that win over Tennessee looks like they're in the field right now. TCU's won 5 of their last 6, looks like they'd be in the field right now, and Georgia, I think is in the field no matter what at this point, barring disaster, but. Looking at Alabama, I pulled it up while you were talking about them. It is definitely more likely they lose a game. They're not going to lose tonight. They're already crushing Mississippi State.
Oh, are they?
But, yes, they are. But they already lost to Tennessee, and they're going to Knoxville on Saturday. So it's not crazy to think that the Gators will wrap this up if they do beat Arkansas. I believe it would be out of reach.
It'd be over. They'd clinch it. They'd clinch the full share. Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, at this point, just what an impressive season, even with the slow start and to SEC play as well with that loss to Missouri. And it kind of just looked like, you know, I mean, if you looked on FanDuel, you probably could have gotten the Gators at pretty good odds. I mean, to win the SEC, and now here you go, and they're in the driver's seat, and it doesn't look like they're slowing down. Like we've said, that since that Auburn game, you know, shades of that Georgia game last year, maybe, they've just been on point. They've played fantastic basketball. There really has not been a game where this team hasn't at least shown up, or some guys on this team haven't shown up. And I think it's a little bit different than last year. Obviously, it was a very well-rounded all-round team, but you know, if Walt had a bad game, you know, you didn't really want to see that happen. And in the tournament, they needed Walt to step up and take over in some of those games, especially as the tournament went on. So just to see this team all around, even when your best player this season, and Thomas Howe, your best offensive player, has an off night, the rest of the team steps up around, and Boogie Fland has a great game. I think everybody has settled into their roles. Even Isaiah Brown was great tonight.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He led the team with 8 rebounds. He had that dunk that really just put it completely out of reach late, and he's been effective. I mean, this is an 8-man rotation through and through, and everyone has a role. Obviously, you don't want to have to rely maybe on Mike at this point in the season just based on how he's played. But, you know, if you could keep Ruben out of foul trouble, which, you know, he was in tonight, you know, he can play. He's shown he's worked on his conditioning. You can obviously tell. And he's been able to go longer in games and be effective, especially in second halves. So, I think it's just a testament to the job Todd Golden has done. I think this is a more impressive coaching job than what he did last season at this point, just with the team and having to maneuver. Obviously, they won a national championship last season. I'm not saying, you know, wow, you know, this is unexpected, but to just be in the same conversation where this team, I think, can make a run. We've talked that, I feel like there is a ceiling. It's just hard to. I don't know if this team can win a national championship, but with how they're playing right now, I mean, there's very few teams I would confidently say yes, that team has a really good shot of beating Florida in a neutral site. So we'll see how the Arkansas game goes, but with it being at home and even in a game where Swain scores 20 plus points and I'm sure Darius Huff is going to have a great game on Saturday because he always does. Uh, this team isn't just, one guy has a great game. We're screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the note of guys kind of settling into their roles, I mean, Urban Klabjar has become like a reliable like 10 or so points off the bench. He had 8 tonight, but 2 of 5 from the 3-point line. I mean, just like everyone's kind of coming together. I agree. I think it's a more impressive coaching job because I mean, again, in a lot of ways, you would kind of be inclined to say that the 2 portal additions in the backcourt were eval misses. I mean, they're both settling in, but I'm not sure Todd knew he was signing up for, I think, like 29% from 3 for Lee in SEC play. I think 17% from 3 for Boogie in SEC play. I don't think Todd thought he was signing up for that. And he still found a way to make it work. And those guys are coming on at the right time. So, I mean, really impressive. Again, I don't know if Florida can win a national championship, but I mean, what did I see? I think they're like the number 1 team in either Torvik or Ken Palm since like January 1st, something like that. I saw. I might be getting that wrong a little bit, but there is some stretch of time dating back more than a month within which Florida is number 1 in one of the major predictive metrics.
So. Yeah, on Torvik, which you can see. Not paywalled for that. They're number 2.
Right sorry, Ken. I'm not paying.
Yeah, Ken. Sorry, Ken. But they're right behind Duke. Yeah, and it's close. And Duke's one loss was a buzzer beater 3. So
yeah,
on the road against their biggest rival. So I think they're okay with that loss. I think that loss doesn't hurt you. We're at the point in the season where seeds are more or less like you kind of know where your team is if you're in the field, barring disasters. But yeah, there's no way Florida's below a 3. There's just no world unless they lose out. And
I think even if they lose out,
if they lose out, they probably still get a 3.
I think they'd still be a protected seed. I think they'd still be for sure a protected seed if they lose out.
So, I mean, this team has really just turned it on recently. And, while it's not great, they're 32% from 3 since January 1st. It's a little better. And if you look at the other top 10 teams in the country, I mean, they're shooting a little bit better than Houston. They're just a little bit below Arizona and Duke and Michigan in 3-point since January 1st. So the gap between the shooting, yes, early in the season, but where it's at right now, maybe isn't as large. And, just the Gators have just been on it defensively, especially. I think tonight was another great effort against a Texas team that lived in the 80-point range in all these games. Just every night seemed to put up 80. And they showed that against Georgia earlier in the season, another team that's like that. But they have their work cut out for them against Arkansas. Darius Huff has been in double digits in every single game he's played this season. He has not scored less than 15 points since November. So, I mean, we're looking at the SEC Player of the Year probably. So, it's going to be a very intriguing matchup. I'm excited to be there. And it will be definitely, for my first basketball game I get to work here at UF, a good.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's the first one? Oh, that'll be fun.
Very excited. So, and game day too. So it's going to be a bit of a barn burner, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to that. And yeah, Arkansas is trying to kind of run away with this one a little bit. So we'll see. It's college basketball though. So I say that now, but obviously we've seen crazier. But yeah, just overall, what a job this Florida team has done over the past 2 months. And this is, if you want to get hot, now is absolutely the time to do it. And now in terms of SEC regular season, you've pretty much got it locked up, and now you're just working towards that goal of, all right, could we win the SEC tournament? Maybe bring that momentum, even if you don't. Could you have a good showing there? Can you show you're going to play that same level and go into the tournament feeling pretty confident and just be ready every game, just one game at a time?
Yeah. Before we move on and talk about some recruiting, just a quick note on Arkansas and Ikuff. Yeah, he's been great recently. I did the math today actually for a preview I was writing of this Arkansas A&M game. He's averaging over the last 8 games 28 points per game. Granted, pretty heavily inflated by that 149-point outing, but there's a couple like 30-point games in there, a couple like 29-point game, I think. So he's been very consistent, one of the best players in the SEC. So Florida's guard's going to have a challenge, certainly, in that game. I think Florida's defense is going to face a challenge. But, again, we saw a team tonight that was shooting the lights out. I mean, they kind of cooled off in the second half, but they were still making tough shots. And, I mean, their big man who I'm not going to butcher and insult him by butchering and trying to pronounce his last name, but I thought, played really well, especially when Micah was in the game. Not a very good matchup there. So, Florida kind of dealt with that tonight, and they were able to still emerge victorious. So we'll see if they can do it at home with the nation watching and with college game day in town. So it should be a lot of fun. But we can go ahead and get into some recruiting because there was big news on the recruiting trail today. Florida added the second commitment in their 2027 class from 3-star Centerburg, Ohio tight end Jackson Bollinger. Interesting here because unless I missed something, he was unrated coming into the day on 247 and has been since committing has become rated. He's now number 381 on the composite. So, for a guy who was unrated to check in at the top 400, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's, a sign that you could rise. I mean, that's decently high for a guy who had not been seemingly evaluated by them prior to today.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. When I checked it earlier, there was a rating on there, so I was like, "Oh, great!" But I just checked. There's a great feature. You can just go and look, and it was today that it was updated. So,
Yeah,
I think when a non-rated guy commits to a big program, it's like, oh, okay, maybe we should look into that a little bit more. But another good get we've talked. I'm not sure if it was last week or the week before, but about the tight end position. I think it was 2 weeks ago, and how, and we're going to talk more about it next week,
Yep.
but how it's been an underutilized position by the Gators and under Billy Napier. And now under a new coaching staff, you go for more of the depth option this year at the tight end spot, but you bring in, a guy like Hezzy Kent, who, I mean, he might, if he plays tight end, that'd be ridiculous.
They're trying. It seems like they want to try.
They
Seems like
want
they
to
want
try, but whatever that is, you've got eligibility on your tight ends though. On the ones you brought in, you've got at least 2 years of eligibility on all of them, and yeah, I think what they're looking for in this offense is a tight end who could block. It's a huge thing because you want these guys in line that are going to block, and Ballinger has showed that he can block. That's been his thing. Is he's a great blocker. He might not be this super ultra productive receiver yet, which is okay as a recruit, as a 3-star 10. But going into his senior year, this is a guy who might get fed the ball more. There's going to be more attention on him. And I just think he could rise like he already did today. And, he officially committed yesterday. He's coming in on June 4th. He had offers from 5 other SEC schools, like official offers, including Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky. So this is a player who was on a lot of radars across the conference. And obviously there's some faith that he could come in and play a role in the future. So definitely an exciting commitment, maybe not the most high profile, but at this point, when you could get commitments this far ahead, it's a great sign. And I don't view this as a guy. He has no other official visits scheduled. this looks like a guy who, at this point at least, is pretty locked in. So definitely a big get for John Sumrall, for the offensive staff, and for the Gators as a whole.
For sure. And yeah, definitely seems like a pretty solid commitment. I mean, he has a handful of other power conference offers. It's not like Florida's the only one in on this, but none of them, none from, schools that I would say you would be particularly concerned about coming in and stealing a guy from Florida. So, I think probably safe in that regard. One thing that's interesting to me about him, and I'm curious because of the fact that it seems that they are intrigued by his blocking ability. Kind of a small frame right now, at least if his current information on 247 is accurate, which it may not be, considering this is a guy who hadn't seemingly been thoroughly evaluated until very recently, potentially today. He's listed at 6'4", 225, which seems a little, certainly not, play right away size right there, unless has bulked up since this was taken or bulks up during his senior year. So probably more of a project guy. But like you said, I don't think this is necessarily a class where you need to take an instant impact tight end because, you're going to have multiple years out of some of these guys that are on the roster now.
For sure. I've seen him listed as much as 6'5", 230. Still a smaller frame.
Yeah.
But again, a guy going into his senior year of high school who could definitely fill out the frame at 6'5". And when you look at Florida's current tight end room, Amir Jackson's listed at 235. I'm sure he's probably going to bulk up a little bit more going into this year potentially, but they love height. That's definitely something they've tried to bring in and retain with Amir Jackson and keeping Micah Jones. So again, at the tight end position, it's not going to be the focal point of this offense. And I think we kind of got an indication of that based on how it was pursued in the portal. But I mean, a good tight end is always nice to have. It's a nice safety blanket for your quarterback. And if they can block, which at this point, it seems like every tight end Florida has shown some ability to block, that could be a big advantage for the Gators, especially in the SEC when you're going up against these big fronts and, teams that might rush 5 or 6 on any given play, to just have your tight end be able to go. And even a guy who could go out wide and block, that's not 6'8", 270, but that's a little bit more, this guy can move and kind of get outside and block on screens or on plays like that. So I'm interested to see the kind of usage, but we're going to have to wait. Like you said, this is a project player, but nonetheless, a player where in a room where right now Florida has 5 tight ends or 6, depending on how you classify Hezzy Kent, a room where depth is greatly appreciated because, you definitely want to have these guys on special teams and stuff like that.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, again, not the kind of commitment that's necessarily going to make you go crazy, but I think it's a nice early get and clearly a guy that, they like because they're in on him when he wasn't, even really getting that recruiting attention. And we'll see if he can rise because like I said, coming in the top, checking in for the first time in the top 400, like it's not like he's a, barely a top 1,000 guy. He's coming in with some cred right off the bat as a decently highly rated 3-star. So, curious to see what comes of it. I think, may not be the last commitment. There's another guy that Florida got, I think it was not a crystal ball, but a on-3 projection from Frederick Ards, an edge from Orlando. So a 4-star, we've talked about him already, but because he's got an official visit coming up this summer as well. But, so it'd be really interesting to see if Florida could maybe lock that one up before we even get to visit time, because he's already scheduled to visit Alabama and South Carolina.
And that'd be a huge get, a top 75 player from the 247 composite. 6'5", 225, definitely some room to bulk up, but would be a good fit in the Jack room, I think is what I said on the first show. I stand by that. 11 sacks this past year, showed some run defending acumen with 73 tackles. And yeah, with that Rivals prediction today, That's a good sign for the Gators. Obviously, nothing set in stone, but the more momentum you pick up, especially going into the summer where we've talked about, 20 something guys that are coming in on official visits in the span of a month. If you've already got guys locked in, they could kind of look and be like, all right, like we're building something here. How can I fit as a piece in this puzzle? And you don't want to, if you really are thinking about coming to Florida, you don't want to wait too long. And then the spot that might have, the role that could be yours kind of gets filled. And, obviously depth is important, but some of these higher touted recruits, like Ards, if he comes in, he's probably going to see the field pretty early as a 4-star pass rusher. That's a position where you rotate a lot. We saw Jaden Woods this past year get a ton of playing time on the D line. So definitely would be another big get, or the Orlando guy. He's going to Bama, to UF, then South Carolina on visits. And it's an interesting final visit as of now with South Carolina. Not a team we've really talked about much in recruiting battles, but
Yeah.
Another team where coaching situation, you don't really know what you're looking at there in the future. So I think the Gators are in a really good spot here, with Ard, someone that John Summerall apparently has been very, someone that he really wants and sees as a good fit for this program. And I think Ards is starting to feel that same way, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it seems like Florida's trending in the right direction there. It would be a really nice pickup. I mean, like we said, top 75 player in the 2027 class. And I mean, that would be the big get, because, Florida has two guys. One's a not low rated, but lower rated 4-star. And the other's a, kind of a mid-rated 3-star. So this would be kind of the first huge high school commitment for John Summerall and this coaching staff. So, we'll see if they can land it. Obviously you land it this early. I mean, obviously getting the projection now is interesting, as opposed to, later in the spring or summer, once he's taken, some more unofficials in the spring. And then obviously those three, at least for now, 3 official visits. Obviously I would expect Alabama is going to stay in the fight here, especially with him being a highly rated player as he is. But yeah, it seems like Florida's in a really good spot, and that would be a really nice get to get an in-state player that you've got Alabama going after as well. But that's not the only recruiting news we've got to get to, because Florida's also making a push for what I would say is emerging as maybe their top quarterback target in the 2027 class. That is Davin Davidson, a 4-star prospect from Cardinal Mooney in Sarasota, currently a top 200 player. He's a really fast riser. Florida offered him on, I want to say January 30th or something like that. It was like just a few weeks ago. And at that time, he was a 3-star. And he's climbed all the way up into the top 200. Wouldn't be surprised if he continues to rise. Big guy, listed at 6'6.5", 215. So, big frame to work with there. Interesting player. Again, seems like, a guy that Florida has really zeroed in on here a little bit as at least one of their top targets. And, I'm curious to see, he just announced his top 8. Florida's in that, along with Kentucky, Auburn, Georgia, Virginia Tech, Mississippi State, Miami, and Notre Dame. So still fighting with some big fish there in terms of, Auburn, and then especially Miami and Notre Dame. So, and Georgia. So not a given there, but I think Florida seems to be in pretty good shape here. Like from what I've heard, maybe in the lead there, which is a nice development considering the guy I would say their previous top target, Champ Mons, may be trending not so much in Florida's direction, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Davidson got the offer from UF on the 24th of January. He was number 676 in the composite at that point. He jumped to 438 to 283, and now he's 193. This is a guy who's going to continue to jump. You talk about physical tools at quarterback. I mean, it's something that when a guy's 6'6" in the pocket, I mean, that's just an advantage. The quarterbacks, It's rare to find someone with that size, especially at that position. And when he's a pitcher, too, in high school, who throws some heat, and he's coming off leading his high school to a two-way state title. Uh, he threw 23 touchdowns. He was just the MVP at the Under Armour Next camp just this week. I mean, this is a guy who's just looks like his stock is just going to keep rising and rising and rising and rising. And just a player who I just think it would be such a good get for the Gators. He just has the physical tools, like we said. He's more of a pocket passer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we've seen Buster Faulkner's able to kind of scheme around his quarterback. I mean, this might be a guy who, if he were to come to UF, and by the time we get to him actually getting on the field, Buster Faulkner might be off being a head coach somewhere. But whatever offensive scheme he might come in, I mean, when you have a guy that's that size, again, just someone who can make a difference and really just show out. And he's shown his arm talent. He's shown that he had a great year. He has a really great release point from the small film I watched on him. And I think would be a really good player for UF to get. Notre Dame kind of late to the party on an offer. They just offered him, his top 8 is a bunch of bigger schools. Like you said, Georgia, Auburn, Miami, Notre Dame are all in the mix. Virginia Tech, it may have not actually been the marriage we thought it was going to be with James Franklin and Drew Aller, but a little bit of Drew Aller, kind of physically,
I could see
a little bit of Drew Aller vibes. And I think I'm not out on Drew Aller in the NFL. I'll just say that.
I was a long time Drew Aller defender. I kind of sold my stock this year. I kind of jumped ship, but I was a day one Drew Aller guy. Yeah. I'm not out on him forever, but yeah.
No, I understand. I mean, obviously this year was rough, but
yeah,
6'6", almost 6'7" at quarterback. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, like, I don't really know what other word to say about that outside of ridiculous. So, I mean, just the physical tools. You just want to get this guy in your room and just figure it out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think an understandable late riser here wasn't starting until his junior year. Was playing. I can't remember off the top of my head who he's been playing behind, but it's someone who went, I believe, P4. It was someone who was recruited decently heavily. So has been on, seeing kind of a backup role before this year, but won a state championship this year. And yeah, I mean, I think a guy that I would not be surprised at all to see climb pushing into the top 100, maybe even if not higher, because we've just seen this story a lot of times where these quarterbacks are kind of late bloomers and then rise up the rankings, especially when they show out at camps, which he did at an Elite 11 camp a month or two ago, pretty recently. But that was kind of what spurred his offer, his run of offers. Because like you said, Florida, did you say the 24th it was that Florida offered him?
Correct.
Yeah, so Florida offered him the 24th, and pretty much almost all of his offers came around that same time. He really is a guy that's only blown up in the last month or two. So I think nowhere to go but up, given his, what he is physically and kind of the room to develop there. So I think a guy I will be watching very closely, and I think Florida would hopefully like to, if he's the guy that they're targeting, I think would like to have this locked up before his senior year. But really curious to see how he develops in his second year as a starter, because I think could end up being someone that's viewed as a really high level quarterback prospect by the time it's all said and done.
It's interesting because I just looked into who the quarterback was, and it's a Stanford commit.
Stanford, that's right. Okay.
Stanford. And, a very different style of quarterback, more of a mobile, just a guy listed at 6 foot, Devin Mingery. But, yeah, I mean, you go from that to just not even a statue in the pocket, actually. Like, he showed a little bit of running ability, obviously nothing crazy. He was under 100 rushing yards, but he had 3 touchdowns, and it wasn't like he was, negative yardage on the ground. And this again, you're kind of athletically just like, okay, like there's something here. What do we do? And other programs are obviously seeing that same thing. So Florida's going to have to fend off some really tough competition if they want to land Davidson. But him being a Florida guy, Florida seeming to have this early advantage on him, it seems, being one of the programs that believed in him. It sounds crazy to say early when they offered him a month ago, but he was at junior day. He's been on the radar of John Summerall and his staff, obviously. So someone that I just think would be another great get if they can land him. We've talked about a lot of really exciting players in our recruiting segments over the last couple of weeks, and obviously, like I said this last week, if half of these guys come to UF, that would be a fantastic class by John Summerall.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the bump class, so kind of interested to see. Will tell us a lot about where he's at as a recruiter. Obviously, I think it's been made abundantly clear to me that that's how they want to build this thing still. That he's kind of a more in, I guess, if you want to distill it down to like the Kirby Smart mold versus the Lane Kiffin mold, if you want to say that, he's definitely much more I would say in the Kirby Smart camp, at least ideologically, because I think at Tulane they had to portal quite a bit, but I think that was more because Willie Fritz left for Houston and took most of his Louis Vuitton with him, as Deion Sanders would say. So yeah, I think, or was it Gucci? Was it Gucci or Louis Vuitton? What did Deion say? Now I Louis sounded right, and then I said it, and I'm like, wait, did he say Gucci? I can't remember.
Let's see.
These are the important.
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. He's bringing his Louis.
Louis. Okay, I was right.
Yeah.
But point being, I think circumstances kind of forced Summerall's hand in that regard at Tulane, and this offseason as well at Florida. I mean, Florida had a lot of depth they needed to backfill that they lost in the portal. But I think recruiting at the high school level, I think, is clearly what they want to do. I think their ideal scenario would be Aaron Philo is at least a 2-year starter, and then you've got a guy, coming in maybe as like a redshirt freshman high school recruit ready to start. I think if you ask like what is John Summerall's perfect world in terms of the quarterback position, I think that's probably mostly what it would look like.
I would agree, and obviously plans could change. That's one of the nice things about the portal era is if you're not happy with the position, you could really just attack that in the portal, and players know that. Players can see, okay, Florida really wants a quarterback this year. Maybe I'm that guy. So that's one of the things in the portal that I think is an advantage and what it should be used for. It should just be, okay, I want more money. But obviously, that's just not the world we live in. But
yeah.
I think Summerall has shown a willingness to use the portal. But like you said, I don't think this is going to be a team that lives or dies by it. At the foundation of a great roster is strong high school recruiting, because that's your way of getting these blue chip guys that you could grow. Because in the portal, they come in and for a guy like that, the price is going to be ridiculous. We saw it with, Darian Mensa, coming off a great year, $10 million or somewhere in that ballpark. Jordan Seed in Florida got priced out. I mean, that's a guy, if you recruit and you have him, a 5-star offensive tackle, that what you're paying him originally isn't going to be what you would be paying him in the portal. That's for sure. No. And obviously you've seen it on the collegiate level then, but still, if you bet on the talent there, and Florida is doing a good job of also identifying these, like we talked about with the tight end earlier, identifying these players that might be a little bit under the radar. I feel like it's been them. Auburn has been in on pretty much all those same guys. as well. So a good job by their new staff on it. But like looking deeper and trying to find some hidden gems using their scouting points and getting the green icon,
Yeah.
in the corner. And it's like, okay, you've got a guy here and get him in the room, develop him, and see where it goes.
Yeah, I hate to say Florida has to moneyball it because I don't think that's a fair characterization. And as we talked about a couple weeks ago, I certainly don't think the NIL situation is that dire, but I also don't think, Florida's very clearly not in a position to go out and just drop absolute bags on the Jordan Seatons of the world. Because they backed out of that one when it got to that point. So I think that's a pretty deliberate strategy on the part of this staff, and we'll see if it pays dividends. I think, with that being said, I think a lot of the guys they're in on are like top 100, top 150 guys. So, still highly rated guys that they're trying to get at the high school level. But I think they'd rather do that than pay a premium for transfers, no doubt. Back to Davin Davidson. He has not set any official visits as of now. He did say earlier this week, I believe, that he is planning to take an unofficial visit at some point in the spring to Florida. I couldn't find a date on that. I'm not sure if he's even set a date or just said, I'm going to take an unofficial visit in the spring. But Florida had him on campus when they offered him, and I believe, and then are hoping to get him back in the spring. So again, we'll see. I think this is still fairly early on in the process. Like we said, just releasing a top 8. I think this is one that could probably progress pretty quickly throughout the summer, though, because I think Florida obviously would ideally like to have him locked in before his season starts. I think conventional wisdom would just tell you that these quarterbacks tend to like to have things locked in before the start of their senior year. I think that just historically is what tends to happen.
Yeah, a little less pressure.
Yeah,
in a way.
And you're a primary recruiter for the class too, like having the quarterback in place. I think there's an element of pressure because it's harder. Like you can't pivot as easily at quarterback, because guys get snatched up. So I think there's kind of, an element of like teams probably pushing them to like, hey, we need a decision pretty soon.
Absolutely. And I just think, like we said, would be a great get. And yes, you're right. He got offered while he was on campus, and I think Florida did that with a lot of guys at the junior day, and I think that was a good move. Being around Coach Summerall and his staff, I feel like the energy you could feel tangibly in person. Definitely, you could feel that. It's not BS. Like, as someone who's only been in a room with him a couple times, and obviously I haven't personally talked to him, but I've seen him personally talk to people, and that same intensity that he has on the media stand is how he carries himself. And I think for recruits that want a coach that like they could be like, yep, I believe I'm like, this guy's gonna help me get to where I want to be, that's a huge thing. And just the rest of the staff also being more assertive, more, like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to get there, more than like, we have the talent to get there, but we all have to, do this. There's a difference in how it's presented. And I think overall, just in recruiting philosophy, it's night and day. And I think it's going to work positively for the Gators going forward.
Yeah, no doubt. So yeah, we'll see how things progress on the recruiting front. I think it's sure to be a very busy few weeks and months ahead as things get underway. Obviously not too far, although it's still, I guess, a couple months at this point from official visits starting, but they're going to have guys on campus throughout the spring. And we'll see. I would say the class probably not staying at 2 guys for too much longer. I think probably not too long before Florida adds to that group. So yeah, before we get into breaking down the receiver room, like I said off the top, some housekeeping elements to get to. NFL Combine workouts start tomorrow. Florida has 9 players who were invited to the Combine. They are Caleb Banks, Austin Barber, Tommy Doman, George Gums, Devin Moore, Tyreek Sapp, Jake Slaughter, Trey Smack, and J. Michael Sturdivant. I mean, I think the top ones here obviously are, Banks. I think still, curious to see how he's evaluated in the pre-draft process because I mean, a guy that was getting very legit, like maybe top 10 pick kind of hype coming into the season, certainly high first round, obviously was hurt, so didn't really get to play much at all. Curious to see if that stock's still high, but I mean, I would still assume he's probably viewed as one of the better interior defensive linemen. In the draft. Also, Austin Barber and Jake Slaughter, I would say, are guys I could. Slaughter, I would be shocked if he doesn't. Barber, I could easily see it, though I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if he doesn't be a day 2 pick. I think both those guys are pretty likely in that regard. I mean, Slaughter could be your first center off the board, but those guys don't usually go until day 2 anyway. But yeah, curious to see maybe some guys can raise their stock. I think Devin Moore, coming off a pretty healthy year for the first time really in his entire career. Curious to see how he's viewed. I think J. Michael Sturdivant, a guy who wasn't really able to show what he was capable of just with the offensive limitations this year, but I think he's a really good player. I think he's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised to see catch on kind of in the way that Chimere Dike did in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing is the NFL draft. I love the combine. So I have thoughts. And as we get more towards draft season, I will definitely make those thoughts clear. I will tell you one thing. Devin Moore is like the Ricky Pearsall type, a guy who's going to go way higher than you think because teams are going to fall in love with him as a person, and they're going to turn on the tape from this past year and see a great cornerback. And at a cornerback at 6'3", who offers you unique size and leadership ability. He won the, leadership award. I forget the exact name of it this year, but voted on that demonstrates leadership on and off the field. And I just think he's a guy who teams are going to love. And in a cornerback draft where, there's those top guys, but there's kind of a bunch in the middle. You mentioned with Caleb Banks, I mean, this is a guy who should test well at the combine in all the athletic drills. I mean, he's a freak. Yeah. He's huge. He's fast. I'm excited to see how he does. And the interior D-line class is the one position group where there isn't a clear-cut guy or two guys. There's him. There's Peter Woods of Clemson, Caden McDonald of Ohio State, and Lee Hunter of Texas Tech. That are kind of a top 4 right now, and they could really go in any order. And at this point, no one would be surprised. So definitely interesting. And I think bringing up J. Mike is a great point because this is a guy who has been on NFL radars for 3 years. A guy who I scouted 3 years ago when he was at UCLA, and I watched his tape, and so I was familiar with him when UF landed him. And I think athletically, this is a guy who's going to have a great combine. At his size, he's quick. I mean, he's a lot faster than people think he is. I think sub 4.4 is not out of question here. And that would definitely raise his stock. Kind of I feel like going into the combine last year, both UF receivers, DK and Badger, were kind of not really talked about much. DK definitely rose his stock and had a really effective year. I could see J. Mike having that same kind of role for a team as maybe more of a return guy. It's not something we really saw at UF, but he has the physical abilities and the football IQ to do that. And one more point, I think Tyreek Sapp is another guy who's going to kill it in the interviews. I think the measurements won't be too kind to him, unfortunately, just shorter arms at 6'2" for an edge guy. But at 280-ish, I think there's going to be conversation about him playing 5 technique in a 3-4. And I think he could do that. And a guy character-wise who just the couple interactions I've had with him and that I've heard from other people that have covered the team in the media, just one of the most unique personalities you'll ever be around, and just a hilarious guy and someone who definitely is driven. So super excited to see how all the Gators do next week. I'm sure we'll go more into that on the results a little bit. But yeah, starting tomorrow, finally kicking off, really draft season. It's all guns blazing. It's my favorite time of the year. I always say the draft is my favorite day of the year, more than my birthday. So I love the draft. I'm super excited. And also the great thing about us doing Wednesdays is you'll get us a day before the draft. So
True.
you'll get all the thoughts going on up here on the draft.
Yeah, I love the draft too. It's hard for me to be that excited about it this year because I'm a Jags fan and we don't pick in the first round, at least as of right now. So that was very much a the feeling when they moved up for Travis Hunter. That's and versus now is very much a me reaping versus me sowing, or sorry, me sowing versus me reaping. Like that's very much how I feel about it right now. Because now I'm sad that the Jags won't be picking in the first round. Although James Gladstone's a madman, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to make a move to get up in there somehow. But yeah, it should really be interesting. I think these Florida guys have a chance to, none of them are really getting talked about as high level prospects. I think this week in Indianapolis could be good for a lot of them, though. I think really curious to see how, especially guys like you said, like Devin Moore and J Mike, how they do, because I think they could really do a lot to boost their stocks. In other Gators news, baseball team continues to stay hot. They won tonight 11-4 over FIU. Midweek sweep. I mean, they're on an 8-game winning streak since losing the opener. What's the record now? I'm trying to.
I believe it's 9.
9. You are right. 9-game winning streak since losing the opener. I mean, it's early. I mean, this weekend's going to tell us a lot. Huge series on the road against Miami, who, if they won tonight, which I'm not sure if they did, they were 9-0 coming into tonight. So that's going to be a tough one. That'll tell us, I think, a lot about this team. But I'm excited. I think they might have the makings of, being a team that's just kind of built to be competitive. Where I think you have, I would say, 2.5 good pitchers, I think. You kind of know you're going to get some inconsistent play on either Friday or Sunday right now, but I think both those guys are also capable of pitching really well, and Aiden is a stud on Saturdays. And then I think this lineup is giving you some really interesting stuff right now. Kyle Jones is playing pretty well. A lot of versatility in the lineup. Some young guys are stepping up too. Surowicz had some nice games. I think this team... This team, I think more so than the last 2 years, feels like it could be built for a deep Omaha run. Although I'm not getting ahead of myself because, again, a lot of questions to still be answered, and they could go get swept on the road in Coral Gables this weekend, and then I won't feel that way. But I'm cautiously optimistic, I'd say, about where the baseball team's at right now.
I would agree. I think a lot of people, myself included, coming into the season were a little concerned about the lineup and how they would show. I mean, I think Kyle Jones has been a revelation. It's just like a guaranteed double.
Yeah.
In the leadoff spot. He should have had his second homer of the season tonight. He got robbed on one that they barely called foul. Brendan Lawson has been amazing. Yeah, defensively as well. Blake Sear with 3 homers already. So it's just been a really impressive start. Like you mentioned, the pitching inconsistencies. I mean, I think we'd love to have a different conversation about Liam Peterson. It's only been...
He was good on Friday. He was very good on Friday.
It was better.
Yeah.
And it's like you see those flashes. But right now, I mean, Aiden King, just lights out. The guy is just unbelievable what he's doing right now. And I'm excited. I think this Miami series is going to definitely preview a lot of what might be to come. But of course, it's really early. I mean, last year, it looked a lot uglier at points. And, you see how the tables might turn there. But, going to Coral Gables against a really talented Miami team, definitely no gimmies there. But a series that I think will be very intriguing to watch overall. And yeah, I wanted to see on this Miami FAU game. I'm trying to pull that up right now because they didn't update it.
Yeah, again, they've been really hot to start the year. They were 9-0 coming into this game. I don't.
Yeah, they're 10-0 now with the win tonight. So
they did win tonight. Okay,
they did, and I'd like to give a quick little shout out to my friend Reese Gary, whose brother's on the Miami team, hit his
Oh,
first
nice.
collegiate home run. So a little hometown shout out.
Yeah.
But of course, we'll see how the Gators do against the Canes in what will be a very entertaining series, if nothing else.
Yeah, very excited for that one. Some other, also on the diamond front, softball is 19 and 0. 19, yeah, 19 and 0.
A lot
They,
and
sorry, go ahead.
no, a lot of no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of no. 19 and 0. They're one of, I saw the other day, they are one of only, I want to say, 5 or so Division 1 teams that are still undefeated. Granted, haven't really been tested, haven't played a ranked team yet. That will change this weekend. Friday night, a huge game in Fullerton, California against UCLA. That's a top 10 squad. So that will be a major test that will put that undefeated record to the test, I would say. So yeah, softball out on the West Coast this weekend. We'll see if they can maintain that undefeated start, but it looks like Tim Walton's got another really good team. So I think could be an exciting, May and June on the diamond front for the Gators.
Yeah, just again, a team that's just firing on all cylinders right now and just has been super impressive as of late. It's always great when you could start 19 and 0 or 20 and 0 or whatever it might be, in the next couple days. But this tournament in Fullerton will definitely, it's definitely some stiff competition for the Gators. They've got Cal Berkeley tomorrow. And they're going to be playing a lot of teams that are going to definitely outnumber the Gators in fans. So a little more of a hostile environment than what they've been used to, and being kind of local to start the season. So, but some adversity isn't a bad thing at this point. I mean, obviously, we're talking about a team that is gonna make noise and be a fixture in the top 10, uh, most likely all season. So, you know, playing these tough teams and seeing where you stack up, never a bad thing. And one more sport to just quickly talk about. Lacrosse rebounded from a nice, they had a loss on the first game of the season to Michigan, but they got two straight ranked wins. Big win over Stetson today. And sophomore Clark Hamilton already has 18 goals in 4 games.
Wow.
She won National Offensive Player of the Week this past week. So she had 7 goals against Loyola in a road game. So there were some questions about who would step up on the Gators offense, and they've been answered pretty quick. So 2 straight Final Four runs for this lacrosse team. I know a very under the radar team at UF, but one that has I got to cover them last year, a team that has a little bit of my heart, and always want to give them a little shout out when they're playing well. So
Yeah, I love that. I feel the same way. I covered them when I was at the Alligator as well, my freshman year. That was longer ago than I'd like to admit now. But yeah, they've been a really good program for a long time. Andy O'Leary does a great job. Curious to see. I mean, they've made some nice tournament runs in the past. Curious to see if they could do that again this year. But I think that's about covers our kind of housekeeping of other Florida sports, so we can get into what's ahead, which is continuing our positional previews, because spring ball is just increasingly just around the corner. We're what now, 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away? Yeah.
I think 2.
Yeah, 2. It'll be here before we know it. We're at a point where these position previews are going to carry well into spring ball, but that's fine. It'll give us something to talk about as things progress. But we'll go ahead and get right into it, talking about the receiver room, which, I mean, I think along with most of the fan base, are very excited about this group, at least especially at the top level. I think has the potential to be really good. We talked about the running back room last week. I'm really high on that group as well. And I'm conflicted between whether I think this is going to be a ground and pound team, because I think it has the personnel to do that, or a team that airs it out, because I think it also has the personnel to do that. So we will see. But I mean, I think the two that everyone is going to be talking about are the 2 major retentions, the true freshmen from last year, Vernell Brown the third and Dallas Wilson. Vernell Brown was your leading receiver last year, even though, not a massive year from him, but still ended up as your number 1 receiver with 40 catches, 512 yards. Didn't find the end zone, which is a little surprising, but still had a really nice true freshman year. Whereas Dallas Wilson, obviously, as everyone knows, battled injuries, only played in 4 games. So kind of an unproven commodity in that regard. But at the same time, like, I think it's fair to say that we have a pretty good idea what Dallas Wilson is when he's healthy. I mean, our introduction to him was obviously that Texas game where he absolutely went off. I mean, he terrorized Texas, 6 catches, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns in that game. Didn't really replicate that in the other games he played in, but I think the potential is clearly there. I mean, everyone saw it with their own eyes in that game. So there's a lot of guys to talk about in this room, but I think that is where you've got to start because those two could be a really dynamic duo here.
Yeah, I mean, the relationship between those two as well. Obviously, Vernell Brown's father, Vernell, Dallas's agent. Obviously, there's a big relationship between the two of them, and they both showed last year why they were so highly touted. I thought Vernell Brown just offered so much to this offense. It's kind of crazy he didn't find the end zone because I feel like he was a big factor in getting the team into positions to score. Sometimes, touchdown regression could be a weird thing or progression. Trey McBride had like no touchdowns for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a great tight end. But Vernell, just a dynamic player with the ball in his hands. He seems to get open pretty much every route. And in an offense that should be functioning on a higher level, that has more options of kind of what they want to do and how they want to spread the ball. He's a guy who just stands out for his work ethic and his knowledge. Trent McKnight said he was just so mature, and his leadership is something that is great. He can play inside, outside. He wants to get better, and it's something I feel like he's going to continue to do as really the primary option. I think as like your more underneath guy. But Dallas Wilson, just with that big playability. Marcus Davis, the wide receivers coach, just talked about his play strength. And that's something that I think he showed in that Texas game, breaking tackles, getting into the end zone. He's just a dynamic player. And, it's just like staying healthy, working on those little things, becoming maybe a better blocker, the route running, more intermediate routes to get that separation. But he has all the talent in the world. And I think he's now surrounded by a coaching staff that wants to, get the best out of him. Not that the past coaching staff didn't want that for him, but I feel like he's in a little bit of a better offensive situation. So these two guys going into their sophomore seasons, any growth would be great because I think everybody knows the talent. I mean, there's a reason why teams wanted these guys out of the portal, and they both chose to stay at Florida. And I think that speaks to their relationship with each other, their relationship with this new staff, and what they want to do as Gators.
Yeah, I mean, the market would have been enormous, certainly, given both the recruiting pedigree and just what what they put on tape last year. I mean, I think Dallas obviously was limited, but that Texas game alone would I think make him quite a bit of money. And then obviously, I think VB3, I mean, you said it, really, I think emerged pretty early on and was just very clearly your best receiver. Like, no disrespect to J Mike, who I also think is very good, but like, to me, like maybe from week 1, it was obvious that VB3 was the best receiver on this team. And I still think, again, everyone saw, not everyone, because everyone's talking about VB3 too, but like, I think a lot of the attention has been on Dallas, and I get why, because I think he has, the big play potential and just because, just give his size and ability and speed and route running, like, I think he has kind of the pieces to be that like number 1 wow play guy. But with that being said, I still think VB3 is going to be your down-to-down most reliable receiver. I'd probably bet on him being the leading receiver again this year. Obviously we'll see on that front. But yeah, I think those two guys are going to be great. And we haven't even talked about, those were the biggest retentions, but then the biggest offseason addition, which is Eric Singleton, coming in from Auburn. Initially was going to the draft. They kind of got him to come out of the draft. Obviously a guy this staff has a lot of familiarity with, or this staff, but especially Buster Faulkner, and obviously, McKnight has a lot of, experience with, and Marcus Davis too. So yeah, really the whole staff, honestly, when you think about it. Obviously Davis coached him at Auburn. He was previously at Georgia Tech, where he had a really huge year that made him, I think, if not the number one receiver in the transfer portal, like highly ranked among them. Last offseason, didn't have a great year at Auburn this year, kind of a down season. I mean, I think it's hard for me. I mean, they have Cam Coleman and he's not, going crazy statistically either. I mean, I think it's hard to pinpoint that on receivers when their quarterback play has been as abysmal as it's been, or as it was under Hugh Freeze, I should say. I think I'd be feel pretty safe in betting on Eric Singleton to be a big bounce back candidate this year. And I think he's just like a perfect fit for the number 3 in this offense with those two guys. I think they all complement each other really well. I think his kind of ability to kind of play in the slot and do, whatever needs to be done, I think will be really nice. And, we'll talk about the depth here too, because I think the depth has some intriguing elements of it too. But I think with these 3 guys, you've got what I would say maybe isn't coming into the year, but I could easily see becoming one of the best receiving corps in the SEC.
Absolutely. Singleton, this is a crazy stat that PFF Premium, I kind of did some digging and found on him. 78% of his passes last year were 9 yards or fewer, like his catches. Mm-hmm. So, and I understand why. I mean, this is speed on this guy. I mean, just crazy athlete, crazy burst. And not hard to see why he's been productive. But at Georgia Tech, he was used more on every level of the field. I think that makes him more effective because he is a good route runner. And he's able to understand cushions on defense. And he went against SEC corners last year. And I don't think his statistical dive last year, if you even want to call it that, was up to him. Like you said, Auburn's passing game last year was really just rough altogether. But yeah, I mean, Davis said he's just a super smart player and just someone who he has a lot of faith in. And Trent McKnight shared that, track speed on this guy, quiet guy, but he goes about his business the right way. I mean, those are the things you want to hear for a guy you're bringing in to be a fit on this offense and just play that role. So with him, he kind of perfectly complements Vernell and Dallas because, Vernell's an underneath guy, but he's not like a crazy athlete. Like he's a great athlete, but he's not
just
like
well-rounded, like I would say, just a good, not really a lot of weaknesses in his game, but not like a premier, like this is Jeremiah Smith that we're watching. Like it's not like that.
No. And Singleton, he's 5'10", 180. Like it's not like you're getting some huge body to, throw it up, he'll go get it. But again, a lot of the effective receivers now, it's get the ball in their hands, let them make plays. This is a guy who's shown he could do that, and a guy who has done it. I'm trying to pull up the number right here on the missed tackles forced, but he had 15 missed tackles forced this past year at receiver. I mean, that's a really high number, and his average depth of target literally cut in half. So yes, he was getting the ball more in those shorter situations, but he's never had a drop rate higher than 8%. He made 8 contested catches this past year. And this is a very well-rounded receiver. And with these 3 guys, playing your X, Z, and F in whatever, in this scheme, Dallas is your physical, Vernell is your underneath, Singleton as your gadget, and more of, get him in space. I just think they complement each other so well. I think this receiver room is the best receiver room Florida's had in a while, talent-wise. And we've seen every year Florida receivers get drafted. So I think it says a lot about just the talent these 3 have. And then, like you mentioned, the depth that we'll go into a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again, but I think if Aaron Philo or Trammell, whoever wins that job, is the guy to the extent that he's a competent starter, and the offensive line at least doesn't fall off a cliff, I think you have the makings of what could be one of the best offenses in the SEC certainly with the skill position talent. I think it's pretty unbelievable what the Gators are going to be working with this year, and the depth too, at receiver and running back, like we talked about the running back depth last week. With Singleton, I don't want to make it sound like his production fell off a cliff in 2025. I mean, he was a 700-ish yard receiver his 2 years at Georgia Tech. He had 534 yards and 3 touchdowns this year. It's not bad. And he actually had a career high in catches. So it's not like they weren't throwing him the ball. I think just the offense he was playing in didn't allow for, the same level of production to what he saw with Buster Faulkner. But obviously, was a 750-yard receiver his last time with Buster Faulkner. I don't know if he's going to, I don't know if he'll produce like that in this offense just because of who he's going to be sharing targets with, but I think he's going to fit a much needed role. So I'm really excited to see that. And then, some depth pieces here that are pretty interesting as well when you look at who else they've got. I mean, Khalil Jackson, obviously back, we'll see. He's been around forever. He's listed as a redshirt senior. Is this his 5th year or 6th year? I honestly can't keep track at this point.
I can't even. It feels like
he had a season-ending injury in fall camp last year, right? I believe.
Yes, I believe. And, I think that it kind of lends itself. I'm not surprised that Marcus Davis said he's having another coach on the team. But he's excited and he's a good player to have in the room and someone who could just knows the offense, picked it up really quick, the new scheme, and just could step in and play a role. I think that's exciting. It's not the flashiest name, but based on how the receivers, it seemed like everyone got hurt last year in this receiver room. No one was healthy all season. So again, the more bodies, the better. I feel like the conditioning of this team will be better under Rusty Witt. I think that was kind of a issue in the past staff, but still stuff happens. I'm sure not everybody we're going to talk about today is going to stay healthy throughout the entire season. So opportunities will come. And if at worst, Jackson's a core special teamer, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they've spoken really highly of him. So they like his presence on the team at the very least. And in terms of other returning depth, really all you got is Khalil Jackson and then TJ Abrams as well. Most of the depth kind of hit the portal. So you're working with a pretty new look receiver core here, other than obviously VB3, who played a lot last year. But, Abrams, maybe I'm a little surprised that Abrams is still here, if I'm being perfectly honest. I kind of think he might get lost in the shuffle here a little bit and get kind of passed up by some of the other additions, be they the handful of transfers they took, because Florida took 4 receiver transfers, I believe. And then, they also took some took 3 high school receivers as well. So could see him get lost in the shuffle here a little bit, but they had him playing in some pretty critical downs last year under the previous staff, which I think I found a bit head scratching at the time, but he was solid. I think he did a respectable job in those situations. It's nothing, about him personally. I think he might get a little lost in the shuffle here, but maybe not.
Yeah. It's a similar profile to Singleton, all things considered.
Yeah.
Another former track guy listed at 5'10". I think he's got some deep ball ability. He's a guy a 3rd and long. I think he offers something that maybe not everybody in this room has, where, he could maybe burn someone deep and, okay, let's throw it up. But like you said, another guy who might get lost a little. And that, there's obviously talent here. Everybody in this receiver room is talented. It's loaded. There's only, there was a little bit of talk of McKnight. He spoke about some 4 receiver sets, and I think that's definitely something that UF will use at points on some certain downs just to change it up. But they're going to want to have tight ends out there to block, unless there's some receivers that just emerge as these great inline guys to block. But, I think there will be opportunities, but I don't know how much we're really going to see a TJ Abrams. I think at best, it's probably similar production to what we got last year, barring injury.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we can look at some of the transfer depth additions too, because I actually think some of these guys are pretty interesting. I would start off with I would say the guy who, if I had to bet, like if I had to bet who of this kind of group of depth guys kind of emerges as the number four, my money's probably, maybe you disagree. I mean, and you're closer, so I'd be interested to hear what you think about this. My money's probably on Bailey Stockton right now. Receiver transfer from Georgia Tech. Obviously, the familiarity there with Faulkner and McKnight. And I think he's wasn't a major contributor, but I think had some interesting tape. I saw a clip where he was moving around pretty nice at the IPF that went viral on Twitter. I mean, I think interesting piece for sure. Kind of probably seems also would probably kind of fit into that more slot type role. And then I think, some guys too, Micah Mays, who was a solid producer at Wake Forest last year, 300, like a 300-yard guy. I mean, look, it's nothing to go crazy about, but when you're like fifth best receiver is a power four transfer who had 300 yards last year, like I don't think that's too shabby. And then there's Jalen Lloyd, who came in Oklahoma State, originally Nebraska. Didn't really play much at Oklahoma State last year. I'm pretty sure he was hurt for most of the year. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And played a little bit more at Nebraska prior to that. I mean, honestly, like the production's not there. I think when you go back and look at some of his Nebraska tape, which I did at the time when Florida landed him, there is some intrigue there. I mean, I think he's an intriguing athlete. I'm not sure he's consistent enough to really see the field, but I'm curious to see. So yeah, of those three guys, who do you think is kind of best poised? Like, would you agree it's Stockton, or do you think someone else, or do you think one of the other two is best poised to maybe emerge as that guy?
I 100% agree. It is Stockton. The Bilton report with Aaron Philo, they played together in high school, played together at Georgia Tech.
Forgot to mention that.
They were with each other, in practice every day. And Philo is the starting quarterback. Like at this point, I do expect him to be. That's obviously an advantage to Stockton. And I just think he's a smart player. I mean, he just understands it. He's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, but he's just has a really good feel for like the defense, what they're going to throw on him. I think that comes from his experience at Georgia Tech. He's a guy who has been maybe not super productive, but like has featured and like has had 200 yards in both of the last two seasons and doesn't drop the ball. And like he's just a very solid player. He's not spectacular, but he's solid. I felt the same way you felt watching Jalen Lloyd. I think he's super interesting. Mm-hmm. Again, just an athlete. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in the return game a little because of that athleticism. I know Vernell is probably going to be the primary return guy, but like, you might want to keep him out of that a little bit if you can, just because preserving his health is a major priority. But yeah, Jalen Lloyd, just a crazy good athlete. And Micah Mays, I think if TJ Abrams is going to have competition for his snaps, I think Micah Mays is a kind of similar-ish player as well, in that same kind of archetype with a Singleton, in a way, like a little bit of a different style of player, but like also like in terms of height, definitely a little taller. But there was some things, with some drops last year, maybe not as good of a contested catch guys you'd like. But again, another interesting addition and some more experience in this room where, we're talking potential on those top two guys. We saw some production, especially from Vernell, but this might be more of like okay, behind those top guys, let's just kind of see like who might fit against certain defenses and certain coverages the best and throw them out there. Especially early on the season, I think all these guys are going to get snaps and just kind of see, all right, who looks good, who's beaten defenses, and go from there. And then obviously we have all these recruits as well that will go into guys that I think may not have a huge role this year, but definitely in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can kind of get into some of those guys now because, yeah, I mean, I think Florida's receiver room like goes 9, 10 plus deep. I don't really expect a lot of these freshmen to see the field, but you've got am I forgetting someone? It's Davian Gross, Justin Williams, and Marquez Daniel. Justin Williams being a local kid, hometown kid from Buchholz. I mean, I'd of those three, my money's probably on Gross to be the one who you might see that. He was kind of the bigger of the three in terms of recruiting stature. I don't really expect you see any of them play a major role just because I think Florida's got a lot of depth at the position. And I have a hard time, believing those freshmen are going to beat out the transfers and, potentially guys like obviously the returning guys like Khalil and TJ Abrams. I think that might be a lot to ask, but I'm curious to see, what if, who, if any of these guys can make an impact as a true freshman this year.
I think they all bring interesting kind of profiles in terms of size, in terms
You've
of.
got, sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off. I don't know if it's just on my end. I'm having some audio issues from you. I don't, it might just be me though.
I, oh,
Like
can
I
you hear
can't
me
even
now?
hear you. It's coming through very like robotic sounding.
Oh, let's see if that's a little better. A little
It's
better
still,
now?
I don't know. I don't know if anyone's in chat right now can let us know if you're hearing it on your end. I'm not sure. Yeah, it might just be me, so I don't want to
Yeah,
derail the show
you
if it's
you
just
got you
me.
got me now, maybe? No?
I struggle, like I can hear you, but I struggle to even understand what you're saying.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
Yeah. So he's gonna leave and come back. We'll see if we can sort out those technical issues, at least that I'm having. It might just be on my end. But yeah, I mean, we're curious to see what Florida's receiving depth looks like.
Any better?
No,
Oh,
it might be
great.
me. Let me see if it's my headphones. Hold on. It might be my
Lovely,
headphones.
lovely, lovely.
Can you talk?
The great.
Oh yeah, it's my
Yeah.
headphones. Sorry about that. Something about my
Oh,
AirPods just
okay.
went
Awesome.
crazy.
I was about to just go check myself, hop on the stream, get another viewer in, but
Yeah.
we're no. So
sorry for that aside, guys. We'll get back
little
on
aside.
here.
But yeah, so I was saying that all three of these guys different profiles physically, which I think is interesting. I mean, obviously, like Marquez Daniel kind of stands out because he's 6'5". You don't usually see that kind of height at the receiver position, but I would agree Davian is probably like the guy most like in track for maybe some playing time just because I just think he's really like the best athlete of the three so far, and I just think his skill set kind of fits what UF is looking for. But I think just having all three guys and just kind of cycling them in a little bit of like, okay, like let's see what we kind of get from these guys, what they're going to offer, because again, they all kind of fit in like their unique archetypes, like. I think Davian actually definitely has the best avenue though to playing time because if Dallas were to get hurt, right, and you're kind of looking for that bigger receiver target, you don't really. I mean, like Khalil Jackson's 6'3", but it's been
we all know the score. We all know the score there. Like
yeah, like he's solid, but like why
yeah.
not see what you have?
Yeah.
So I definitely think there's an avenue. I don't really know especially for Marquez, um, too. Like he could also fit that role a little bit. I think they both could. Um, I think for Williams, it might be a little bit more of a tough ask year one, but obviously being a local guy, I think his dream of taking the field his freshman year for UF, I think will come true early on in the season, and we'll see all three of these guys at a point. Hopefully, if they're healthy, and definitely exciting. The future of this position is definitely in good hands, and a position that we've seen John Summerall and his staff go really hard after as well in the recruiting process for the upcoming seasons as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think this is a position group where, like, I mean, I feel pretty confident in saying everyone's healthy. You're probably looking at, in some order, BB3, Dallas, and Singleton finishing as your top three in both targets and yards. But I mean, I really do think beyond that, like, your guess is as good as mine who that number 4 could be. I mean, it could be one of the returning guys. Maybe they make an impact. Obviously, like we talked about, it could be Bailey Stockton because of that familiarity. I mean, it could be Micah Mays, probably the most, I guess, most proven. I would say, of that next line of players. I mean, not extraordinarily proven, but just given his production. So yeah, I mean, I think really interesting group. I think, like you said, they all fit a role, and I think that's maybe a recurring theme of how this staff is built. Not just the receiver room, but kind of the roster as a whole. I think it's very catered toward like archetypes. I want, if that makes sense. Like, I think they have a very clear vision of what they want to get, and they're finding guys, not just like the best players they can get to come to Florida, but they're finding guys who fit what they're trying to build. And there's kind of, I think there's a strategy to it all that is intriguing to me, and I'm curious to see how it all looks in the fall, obviously, but even just when we get on the field here for spring practice here in a few weeks.
Absolutely. I think, like we said, just the talent offensively, it offers a lot more unique opportunities, I would say, for this team to really just kind of go with the flow schematically and just kind of like figure it out from there. So I'm definitely intrigued to see how it goes going into the season, and just who's going to emerge behind maybe the guys we're talking about, those main guys. But I definitely think a lot more focus on the passing game in general going into the season, and just yeah, very, very, very exciting time for this Gators passing attack. Whoever's going to be quarterback is going to be surrounded, which I think gives a lot of faith for whoever is going to be the quarterback, and some trust, and maybe some already built-in rapport with some guys if it is Aaron Philo. So definitely a fascinating situation that we will see play out, especially in spring ball, and get a little more clarification of maybe who's out ahead for maybe those backup positions that we're kind of speculating on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think spring ball is going to be very enlightening for a number of ways, not just in terms of, which personnel are kind of at the top right now, but just also what this is going to look like, what the run pass split is going to look like, and just stylistically. I think it is going to be among the more intriguing, spring camps that in a few years here at Florida. So very excited to see how that looks. Very exciting receiving core. If everyone stays healthy, I think it could and very well should become one of the best in the SEC. Ooh, well, it's been a fun show. I really appreciate everyone who's been in chat, sticking around this late. It's 11 o'clock Eastern here, as we did this a little late tonight because of the basketball game. But no, it's been a lot of fun, a lot to talk about. Kind of just feels like things are heating up in general. I think, some steam picking up on the recruiting trail. Obviously, as we get closer to spring ball and get into spring ball, there's going to be a lot more to talk about football wise. It's not just kind of complete speculation and kind of reading between the lines on what, Summerall and his position coaches say. So really interesting couple weeks coming, and curious to see what it's all going to look like.
Absolutely. And to second what Tyler said, appreciate everybody sticking around. A bit of a later show again, but we'll be back to that more normal time next week. And yeah, it should, at least that's the plan.
That is the plan. And very well could be talking about a clinched SEC regular season championship by the time we are back talking to you. In fact, I would say, unless Florida's losing, and if Florida wins these two, if Florida wins these two games, they will they don't need any help, right? If they win these two games, they will have outright.
I think if they win Saturday,
they not like a clinched, not a share, like not a co-champ.
Gotcha.
Outright singular championship.
I believe
Because if they win these next two, that doesn't matter what happens against Kentucky.
Nope.
So exciting stuff, really fun. Curious to see, going to be fun to talk about this team as we get closer to March, get into spring ball. Going to be a really fun few weeks and months coming up. Really excited to get into all that. But we really appreciate, once again, everyone for tuning into this. Please remember to like, subscribe, and we appreciate you watching. And we'll see you next week.